Jennifer here of Belladonna's Botanicals, and I wanted to make this video. I wanted to talk a little bit, and this is going into sort of my a random sort of side quest in my occult origin stories. As I've mentioned a few times, is that there was a period of time in which I wasn't practicing, and that I was fairly like on the atheistic agnostic spectrum as far as that aspect of spirituality went. I'm going to kind of explain a little bit of the backstory on that. And trigger warning, there is some religious trauma related stuff in here. So um, now, as I've mentioned, I went to Catholic school. I did not go to Catholic school my entire life. I went from the third grade until I graduated high school. So a significant chunk. I just missed the first, K through first and second grade. My family wasn't particularly religious. I mean, I think we would be what you would call the Christmas and Easter Catholics, because that was pretty much the majority of when we went to church, unless there was like a wedding or funeral or something. So not not a hugely religious family. I mean, to be honest, my on my dad's side of the family, they are what is sometimes called Greek Catholic or Byzantine Catholic, because they're Eastern European, which is different than Roman Catholicism. So their churches are actually really pretty. Anyways, but there are some differences there in that. But when we had moved to Northwest Georgia when I was about 6 years old, not a whole lot of Eastern European people in Northwest Georgia. Where I'm from in Pennsylvania, hello, Eastern European people. It's very Germanic, Russian, Ukrainian, Slovakian, all that. So we had started going to the Roman Catholic Church, and I guess my parents converted to Roman Catholicism. I think my mom was Moravian. I don't even know there's so many different sects of Christianity that I really don't know. She never was all that big into it, and but yeah, so and it was nice. I mean, it was an interesting, because you think for Deep South, very what's the word I'm looking for without culturally closed. I mean, granted, I've got my own issue. I've got other issues with having grown up in Northwest Georgia. But one of the fascinating things about the church we went to, and this is indicative of the lack of cultural diversity that there was in that part of Georgia, is the Jewish family from town went to the Catholic church because it was like, well, close enough. Because there probably was not a very high population of Jewish people who lived in that area in Northwest Georgia. So but what was cool though, one of the things in sort of a cultural exchange, I remember, I guess it was, we got 8. We had to do the Catholic church that we went to, we did a Seder supper, which is a Jewish tradition, and I got to perform the part of whatever the reading and the bitter herbs thing is. Let me tell you, they did not prepare me for the bitter of bitter herbs as an 8-year-old, and I was not too pleased about that. Anywho, so I had gone to public school for, well, we lived up here when I was in kindergarten, so in Pennsylvania. So I went to kindergarten up here, and then I went to first and second grade at the public school in Georgia. And then for third grade, we went to the Catholic school, which I really actually loved the school I went to. I mean, the teacher I had was really nice. And the kids were nice. I don't have a whole lot of memories of that, but when we moved back north when I was about 9, I guess it was before the fourth grade. So I went to a small Catholic school here. I kind of always just was like, all right, nice stories, whatever. It's kind of it kind of reminds me of the time my grandmother asked me about whether or not I still believed in Santa Claus, and I was about 10 or something, and I was like, I never thought about it. You just kind of like go along with things and whatnot, and I was like, oh, so technically my grandmother told me that Santa Claus wasn't real. And if anyone's sorry, spoiler alert, Santa isn't real, or is the Easter Bunny, or Tooth Fairy, apparently. Although the Tooth Fairy, the Fae, I could see coming for your teeth. Not for nothing. Cats, what are you doing? Anyways, so I really didn't think much about it. I mean, when you're in grade school or junior high, it's mostly just, Bible stories and whatnot. And, it's indoctrinating, but at least where I went was seemingly innocuous. And still mad props to my 7th grade teacher for being like, okay, I'm going to close the door and you're not going to tell the parents. I'm teaching you evolution. She was not a nun. She was one of the secular teachers. Anyways, but yeah, so I got to learn evolution at a Catholic school. Anyways, and that was the only time it was ever touched upon. So my knowledge of evolution for most of my life was that of a 12-year-old. But anyways, I've hopefully filled in some of the gaps over the years. But it really wasn't until I got to high school that, and I have a general kind of pissant attitude of question everything. And I started finding that it was a lot of the do as I say, because I told you so, because it's in the Bible, because. And I wasn't getting answers to things that were valid questions to me. Like, and so around the time, and ironically, what was really funny was REM's Losing My Religion was really popular at the time. So it was like 1991. So it was around that time I just kind of was like, yeah, F this shit. So I kind of, I had to still bear through the rest of Catholic school, but I just started. I very abruptly. I'm not sure what the catalyst was at that point. I know in '92 what the catalyst was, and we'll get to that. And trigger warning for that story. I just was kind of like, there is no God. I don't believe in this. I don't believe in the Bible. This bullshit you're teaching us that we have to be homophobic and, that's a sin, or, abortion's a sin, or, thinking about killing someone is just as bad as doing it. When it got into the morality of it, actually, it might have been, was it that year? I think it was the church history year. So there was one year when theology switched. No, that would have been junior year. So that would have been later 90. My timelines are a little screwy because I'm old. Anyways, so it was around my sophomore year that I was kind of like, because I know the priest who taught that class was one of those who led a spiritual group, one of those spiritual pray the gay away conversion therapy kind of groups. So ew. And my mom, it was by the time I got into the church history and we started learning about things like the Inquisitions and the burning times and the witchcraft trials and all this. And I was like, and y'all okay with this? Because this is some heinous shit right here. And yeah, it's part of church history, but you also aren't teaching that this was bad and we shouldn't be doing these things. So it kind of furthered the schism for me in that sense of pulling away. And I was getting a little bit more embracing more of my metaphysical side then too. And I was spiritually seeking. I think I was obsessed with Hinduism for a while because, okay, now you have to remember this is pre-internet times. So I was trying to find any religion whatsoever that believed in reincarnation. So that was the only one I really knew of. I was obsessed with that for some reason. But it was something I was drawn to at that point. But the thing that really sealed the deal for me was in early 1992, February. I had 2 friends unalive themselves within a 2.5 week period of time, and both were being essayed, abused, and physically by family members. and unalived themselves. One was 15, one was 18. Um, and isn't that nice that that for, you know, I forget which priest it was who said it, but it was basically like, well, suicide's a mortal sin, so now they're burning in hell. I'm like, okay, I have two things for you there. Um, Catholic Church, one, two, I'm out. And then I was a giant pissant for the remainder of my education there. So, how I graduated sometimes I really don't know. But that was the beginning of me, and I held on to that. Like, I was very, very angry at the church for, like, I didn't start. Even now, sometimes I get a little, "Ugh," like, I naturally cringe when people sometimes talk about, like, I'm like, "Okay, you're okay now. You're in your safe place," but, like, I the religious trauma I carried from a lot of those experiences, like, made me very angry at the church, made me very angry at God, and I was very much on the, "Fuck this shit, there is no God." I just did not really have any desire to accept or acknowledge working with any type of divinity. And even when I got into the earlier witchcraft, Wicca was sort of like our access point. I was kind of interested in, like, Celtic mythology and maybe some of the Norse stuff at the time, but I didn't really get super into working with any particular uh gods and goddesses at that point. Like, not on a regular basis or anything. Like, it was sort of like, well, I like Celtic mythology, it's nice stories and stuff like that. But because I always looked at it kind of in that sense of not attaching, whether it be an archetypal god or goddess kind of structure or deity kind of structure to any of them, that I just sort of bypassed working with spirit, however you define that, in any kind of capacity. Like, I had spirit guides, I had spirits sometimes that would show up, but, like, it wasn't something for me that was a really crucial part of my practice until 3 years, 3.5 years ago. Because and even when I got back into witchcraft, I was like, I don't want to work with any deities. I don't want to work with gods and goddesses and angels and demons or anything. I don't want to do that. So it took a little bit of letting go for me, and sort of trying to, I was talking with other practitioners at the time as I was really getting back into my practice, and I think I skipped out the big part of there. So I once let me backtrack here, and I'll catch up to that of how I started working with spirits. So, I still was dabbling in witchcraft stuff until through the late '90s until, like, maybe 2000, and when I got together with my ex-husband, we're still good friends, don't get me wrong, but he was a very pragmatic atheist too, or agnostic, and, um, it just kind of it kind of pulled me further away from ever explore, and I really got away from, my spiritual practices for a long time there. And it was a very slow and weird kind of winding road that brought me back to my spirituality. Because he was a very pragmatic atheist and thought everything was stupid. So I was like, all right, well, um, I kind of ended up feeling that way too about anything religious or spiritual or whatever. So I just kind of locked it all away, put it up on a shelf, and did not have anything in my life at all. Um, so how I ended up rolling myself out of very staunch, you know, there is only science, religion is stupid, spirituality is stupid. How I got out of that mindset, because I'd been in that mindset for a very long time, up until 2020, or maybe even started kind of like getting interested in certain aspects or certain things. But yeah, it's probably about late 2019, early 2020. Because yeah, when I first started, well, let's sorry. I'm just gonna put that little sidebar in here. I've been off my Adderall for a few weeks now. Um and I've also been on a microdosing psilocybin regimen, and it's one of my days off, so I tend to be a little more whiffy on those. Um so pardon the derailing of the train of thought. Um so how I started becoming more spiritual is it happened in little pockets of things that brought me back to myself. And the first was I started doing a lot of yoga back in the mid 2000s. And I started doing a lot of Kundalini yoga at the time. So I think I had sort of a spontaneous kind of Kundalini awakening at that point. But I started getting a little more open to spiritual practices again, like meditation and mindfulness and things like that. And by about 2010, 2011, I I started dabbling in aromatherapy, essential oils and things like that for sort of like therapeutic, like stress relief, sleep, stuff like that for wellness and mindfulness and things like that. My ex-husband did not like essential oils at all. Apparently pleasant smells made him angry. Love him to death, but we were very different people. um so it was like starting to get into some of that stuff. I've talked a little bit about that in other videos of the slippery slope of how dabbling in aromatherapy led me to here. But and it's weird because a lot of the people who are really into the aromatherapy part, and I've talked about this in the videos I've done on MLM cults when I was on the Young Living side, those were all some like hardcore Christian cult kind of people. So not my cup of tea, obviously. It wasn't necessarily the spiritual woo woo, airy fairy, metaphysical, those types of people. So after I got divorced, I kind of, was continuing my exploration into further into like the health and wellness and mindfulness. I got all my certifications in aromatherapy and started taking herbalism classes and all that stuff. And I found actually, as I was going through some stuff, I found my original notebook, and it's from sometime in early 2019, and that I wanted to start making and taking my knowledge and making like pagan products basically. And I had kind of sketched out some designs and stuff for things I wanted to make. Still was a little just dipping my toe in the water a little bit at that point in time, kind of seeing where I wanted to end up or how I wanted to. Corey, what are you doing up there? Um, how I wanted my practice to evolve. And I still was not entirely convinced about working with gods and goddesses and any kind of spirits or deities. So I started kind of buying some things. This is around the summer of 2019. So I started, making my first altar again and um getting back in reading everything, taking some classes. I was At that point in time, I was a little bit more bless you, buddy. At that point in time, I was a little bit more on the hoodoo side of things, not necessarily as hoodoo as religion, but like the hoodoo practices. I still do incorporate some of that. I just don't like work with the Orishas or saints or anything like that. That's associated within like kind of that hoodoo spectrum. So, I mean, some of the rituals and the practices and the spells, I think, are kind of. I mean, they're woven into a lot of different other practices, but anyway, so that's kind of where I started coming in a little bit on that side, but I still wasn't convinced about working with any particular spirits. Oddly enough, one of the first ones I was drawn to, but I didn't start working with her till last year, was Santa Morte. Um, but by about I felt very much at that time a much stronger pull to the dark side, because I've always felt that pull, and there's another video Imma do, I just have to pull the, journals about it. It's going to be black magic. I love the story, because I found a lot of my old writings and stuff from back kind of, skirting around this, the atheist, agnostic thing, like the things I wrote, when I was in high school and stuff like that, so, um and I was talking with a colleague at the time, this is probably about March. I had a consultation with someone, and we're no longer friends, so I'm not gonna mention their name. So, I was just kind of like, wanted to start working with maybe some of the goetic demons or dark goddesses, and I just was kind of like, all right, maybe I'll see if this works, or if I get anything out of this. I really don't know. So that's how I started working with Lilith. And um she was the one that sort of came through for me at first. And as my YouTube channel has grown and stuff, those stories kind of exist in the vast archives of things and whatnot. I've talked about my early experiences there, but it was really hard for me. Like, it was really hard coming from a very staunch atheist agnostic mindset to really opening up to spirit, whether it be working with spirit guides or power animals or ancestors or any of the, however you want to define, dark goddesses, demonic, divine, angels, fallen angels, uh, whatever you want to put in that category. And even now, it's still sometimes a little, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't find it daunting or scary. It's just kind of, it's weird. It's different. It's and I was thinking about this the other night, and like, you can tell, like, I sat there and thought, like, for all my years of, having gone to Catholic school or having, you know and being within that realm, it's like everyone just, prays their prayers to, God, Jesus, whatever. You say your Hail Marys, you go to church, you sing your hymns, and, amen this and whatever. I don't know. It's been a hot minute since I've been stepped foot in a church. Um, so and was thinking about it, it's like I never felt any connection to that God or Jesus or the Virgin Mary or any of those stories. I never felt them as a presence in my life. I never, so sitting there, saying your little prayers. Now I lay me down to sleep. Blah 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 blah. Um, there were just words I was saying. There was nothing. There was no passion. There was no communication. It would just be like me. Hi, pillow. Bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts, blah, 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 blah. That was, to me, that was my relationship with God and Jesus and Christianity. It was just nothing. And I have to wonder sometimes, like, looking at, where we're at with modern Christianity and stuff like that. It's like, do these people actually work with spirit? Like, do they, are you just, our Father, blah, 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 singy song, singy song. I'm gonna go hate people now. Doesn't seem like it's working with that God or Jesus or the Holy Spirit or the Virgin Mary or the saints, like saying a banal prayer or going, please, Jesus, let me win the lottery, doesn't seem the same as when you're really deeply entrenched working with spirit. It's so detached. I think that's how I felt about it. And maybe it's the difference between being a solitary practitioner versus, I'm watching the priest on the stage. I don't know. I forget the words for it. But the priest does his blah, 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 ritual thing. Because let's not mince words here. The a Catholic service is that's some ritual stuff there. Hmm. Y'all got the candles and the incense and the goblet of wine and whatever those postage stamp wafer things are, the body and blood of Christ. Symbolism. Anyways, you've got your iconography and all that. So, I just never felt any connection there. So now, as I've built my working relationships with Lilith and Lucifer and the other one, Abaddon, I've been working with a lot right now. Belial, Azazel, Santa Muerte, and I've worked with others, obviously too. It's different. Like I feel different working with spirit, and I think the perspective I come from, not having had that in my life, that kind of relationship with any type of entity or spirit working with them, there's nothing that kind of taints that experience as it would, because I didn't have that when I was a good little Catholic schoolgirl or a passant little atheist. I don't know. Like I don't know how to quantify it sometimes, where it's fascinating because I just didn't think I would ever really be someone who really ever got spiritual to this level. Because I've always been a question everything person. And I do still do that. I question myself. I think I posted in my YouTube community. There's a thing from a month ago. I was doing a ritual with Abaddon, and then I could not figure out. Like I had a framed photo of a framed photo, like an illustration of Abaddon on my altar, and then in one corner of the altar, because I was taking some pictures of the incense smoke, there's a hooded figure that is not in that illustration. And I looked at everything in my house to try to I'm like, what is reflecting in this from this particular angle, but only in this one photo? Trying to find some way to rationally explain something that was there but not there, or that I caught a glimpse of. So I do question things, and I think that in my experiences with the things that have been revealed to me, whether it's stuff like I've always been fascinated by past life. And I've mentioned this probably hundreds of times, but that was my first core belief as a child, was in reincarnation. So that's something that's always fascinated me and I've always explored. I've had multiple past life regressions and readings and things like that by different people over the years. I've done some myself. And it's something I've meditated on. So and I have other videos I've talked about that, and sort of, I guess it kind of goes, looking at who we were in past lives and the influence on it now. And some of that, and also in my incarnate deities and chosen ones thing is sort of, I guess the thing is having some humility that, you could be wrong. I could be wrong. We all could be very wrong. Or whatever. It's up to if you think you're the one true Lucifer, then you're the one true Lucifer. There you go. Problem solved. I don't think so. I think, that there are people who are, not well and delusional. But generally speaking, someone who can question things, including themselves, probably isn't delusional. Um, because I allow for myself to grow and to be wrong and to learn something. So what I knew in my workings 3 years ago, I'm like, yeah, that kind of, there's a progression in which that comes back around. And I can look at how I've grown and how those relationships have grown with those particular entities, or, how things have changed, or the lessons I've needed to learn when I'm like, why didn't this work out? I did a petition and pact and whatnot with Lucifer. I'm like, oh, Lucifer gave me exactly what I wanted at that time, just to watch me fall flat on my face to be like, hmm. So that was what you really wanted? Because there was a bigger lesson I needed to learn at that time. And lesson learned. And working with spirit occasionally, you're gonna fall on your face and fall on your face hard. Um, but you're supposed to learn something at the end of the day. There's never gonna be a point where like, well, I know all I need to know, and I'm never going to get to that point where I'm not going to stop learning and experiencing and finding new ways of doing things and working with magic, working with, the things that I do, whether it's crystals or herbs or essential oils. I'm not going to stop developing my relationships with spirits. I mean, some, like right now, like I'm working with Abaddon almost in the way frequency in which I was working with like Lucifer and Lilith, because I feel like right now that's something that needs to be, that's where I'm at. That's the path I'm on right now. Does that mean I'm never going to work with Lucifer and Lilith again? Of course not. It's the message I keep getting over and over again is trust the process. So I'm kind of going wherever the day takes me and wherever the journey goes. Right now things are in a very chaotic state of flux for me. I am in whatever date this is, that I get this dropped. My house is going to be on the market. So I have spent like weeks cleaning and organizing and having to hide all my witchy shit because when you're having strangers into your house that you're like, please pay me a lot of money to move here. I have to remember I pulled it to the side. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna change out the welcome to hell, doormat with the welcome doormat. So I just have to clean it off and I just have to, I guess, just hose it down or put it in the mud sink downstairs. But so I'm in a very chaotic state of flux right now as to what I'm doing, and I'm super sad that I had to make my house all boring looking. Henceforth, why I am filming in front of the staircase. Also, I'm trying to like keep the house clean because I've been in so much pain because I've been cleaning all the freaking time. So and hiding things. Thankfully, I have gigantic closets that I can just put things in bins and stuff them in the closets. Although it's making when I have to actually make something for the biz and whatnot, or when I'm like, shit, I need an oracle deck, or I needed this. It's like, where did I put it? Where's that book? So yeah. Things are really chaotic for me right now, as I was saying. So like I've been working on, I'm gonna do a separate video on this, is working on some of this kind of dips into the past life regression, but some of it also um goes into like working on recovered memories from PTSD that were lost to the sands of time. Um so those are kind of things are coming about. I don't know what my video schedule is going to be like right now. So or what my workings are going to be like. I mean, I think right now my rituals and spells are going to be very, very bare bones. I'm probably going to be doing a lot of astral work and like channeling and meditation kind of stuff because I've had to kind of pack things away and I can't always, I left some of like the stuff out I access the most. It's in a bin under my main altar. What once was my main altar. Um, God, I cannot wait to set it up. I hope I have enough room to have like a full altar room instead of having like an altar here, an altar over there, one upstairs, one down there. But anyways, so yeah, that's kind of a little bit about my journey and how I turned to spirituality from a place of agnosticism and atheism. And, you know, I know that there are non-theistic satanic Satanists, like the Satanic Temple type people out there. And there's non-theistic Satanists, there's theistic Satanists, whatever floats your boat. I find that for the past 3 years for me, working or so over 3 years now, working with the entities that I work with, working with the spirits and the divine, demonic divine, and the dark goddesses has been really enriching for me. So, I feel like maybe I was missing out on something in the past, but our journeys will lead us down different paths at different times, and that's where I was at that time. So now I'm here now. And another 3 years from now, it might be an entirely different place. So, anyways, I'm gonna wrap it up here because I've been rambling for a while. My latest stream of videos have been really long. Sorry. Anyways, thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Smash the notification bell. And I will talk to y'all soon. Bye.